Hi everybody, and welcome to this episode of Build with Stakki. This week we have Michael Maximoff on the show, co-founder, chief growth officer at Belkins, a sort of leading lead generation agency, one of the best omni-channel agencies. So we're going to have a lot to learn. Michael, thanks for joining and coming on the show.
Well, James, thank you so much for taking the time and having me on your show. Really excited about the conversation.
Excellent. And look, it's a pleasure to have you. Obviously, sort of myself with a background from sort of that lead generation agency and SDR agency world, always like talking to sort of leaders in that space. And through our sort of previous conversations, one of the things that came up was how we used to do SDR work, and now with all the growth of all of the different tools, sort of the journey you've had to go on through all of that, from sort of being a self-taught CMO and all this go-to-market engineering. That's obviously a hot topic that a lot of our audience are always asking, should we get a go-to-market engineer? Do we just outsource the stack stuff? What makes sense of that? So can you just give us a bit of an insight into maybe what your role as sort of chief growth officer looks like at Belkins right now? And then maybe just a little bit of what do you mean when you say you're kind of a self-taught CMO over the last
absolutely.
8 years?
Yeah, I think it's a great way to start the conversation, right? So the chief growth officer role entitles basically, doing everything from marketing, sales, and customer delivery to, as well as sort of like doing more like an offering development and product development, just really being on the front of like, what is that we need to do at Belkins to provide the best value for customers, whether we need to do better what we're already been doing, or we need to create something new. An example is, one of the last things I incorporated last year was this kind of RevOps team that's part of kind of the Hubspot implementation team that we are also doing for customers, because we realized that, most of the customers have very messy CRMs, right? So it's just, that's kind of just give listeners an idea of like, that at the end of the day, my job is to make sure that the company is growing, that the business is growing, thus customers are growing, right? So if customers are growing, then I'm obviously doing my job right. The reason I'm a kind of a self-taught CMO was that when I started the business 10 years ago, I have a sales background, and I started a sales agency because like lead generation and appointment setting was a part of like a sales force usually, right? So,
Yep.
Calling, emailing, prospecting, generally just part of the sales team, right? And I was building it as a sales agency early on, but we've done a lot of marketing. So, we went, most of the agencies, they do their own, they eat their own food. So they do their own appointment setting for themselves to book the customers. But we also were very loud with regards to our content. So we've created a great blog and, case studies and social and then webinars and YouTube. I was kind of doing the podcast. So over the years, we sort of like ended up spending lots of budgets, and because my job was kind of making sure that we're communicating value prop, we're just communicating the right values of Belkins to the audience, and who we are, what we do, and then kind of developing the offering. And we were spending, I think at some point we were spending like north of $2 million a year in marketing with the team of like 25 like 30 people. And I was spending and making so many mistakes with like how do I deploying that capital. Then I had to learn how to be very efficient with marketing. And then when we've done that, we were able to really kind of achieve a performance for us where our cost of acquisition for appointments booked from outbound dropped from say $400 to $250 when we optimize our ads, when we get our direct traffic, organic traffic, all those cool things. So like, oh wow, so actually kind of this whole kind of all bound full funnel kind of motion works really well together. Can I do the same for customers? So over the last like 3 years, I was trying to kind of replicate the success of Belkins for our customers and see how that works for them. And that's kind of the reasons why we've kind of ended up in this kind of whole omni-channel, full funnel service offering, exactly to kind of to see whether, to help customers to see appointment setting and lead gen more than just outbound, but rather like as the part of this kind of a full funnel, more complex journey that the buyers have, which very often starts even before you kind of send an email or get in touch with people. Yeah, so that's kind of broader.
That's a great insight and great story. And there's lots of things we could go off from that point. But I think what you said at the end there is that trying to help customers see that the appointment setting and that initial lead generation it is part of a much bigger system. And one of the things that I talk to our customers about, and I think we've seen regularly over the last 3 or 4 years, is that there are more and more tools on the market, and
Right.
people were sort of giving those to SDRs, thinking, "Oh, do this, use that sequencer, use this to capture this, use that to do this, use that," and suddenly you had this bloat and this distraction. And as someone who just taken us through that journey of sort of learning all those different marketing elements, a team of 20 or 30 people, spending a few million on marketing a year, creating lots of content and stuff, I think that is where this go-to-market sort of engineer, go-to-market operations person is kind of trying to put all those tools together. So how have you sort of addressed that now with all these different tools in the market? Have you managed to shrink that team a little bit and have a more consistent flow, or do you think people are still like doing a lot of the lifting?
So that's actually, again, that's a great question. The way I look at this is I never try to chase for the most shiniest tool that is out there. I'm trying to always think about the basics and the fundamentals. Like, is that what is I'm trying to achieve with this tool, right? A good example is like, people have their CRM, they're paying for HubSpot or Salesforce, but their utilization rate is only like 20%, 30%. They don't even know what the features
See
out
it all the
there,
time. Yeah.
exactly. And when they think about the lead enrichment, right? Instead of thinking about like whether my CRM provider have that functionality baked in, they go and start buying other tools that are, the other tellers are selling to them, right? So I was always priding myself into, being very efficient and scrappy with the way I'm utilizing my tool set and trying to maximize the utilization level of each solution that I'm paying for. Right. And then I was trying to build a professional relationship with those solution providers to be able to see where they're going next, what they're developing, and how I can incorporate more of what they're offering into my business. Right. So with that being said, most of the tools that I've started using for the SDR work even 10 years ago, we're developing very synchronically with each other in a way. So take example, probably like outreach and reply and lemlist and instantly and all others. At the end of the day, they're all outreach tools or engagement tools, right? Like their interface might be a bit different. Some of them might have a bit different tools, but they're deploying them the same way, right? So often, I wasn't very boyish to kind of switch between the tools. I kind of build a relationship with a certain provider and then kind of develop it. But then over the years, because we were providing that solution provider feedback onto, hey, this is where the market is going, this is what we need, they always were saying, hey, this is exactly what we're building, or this is what we're thinking about building. So I kind of have this very kind of native integration with a lot of them. And over the years, I was able to sort of like build a very clean and simple, but yet effective tool stack that the team is still using, right? So, so when AI came, right, like the job would be to, is there a use case that I can use that would make a difference for me, right? Because I think like, and I always talk about this on kind of my posts and the newsletters, that the fact that I'm utilizing my tools and I have an effective process is not that I have many tools that I pay for, but rather like I address the fundamental, more strategic sort of like things. Like I, took care of my ICP, of my buying persona. I'm building a very kind of good enriched list all the time, like optimizing and A/B testing and trying to sort of like trying to to push the needle into the things that that not necessarily need to be, you can automate still, but they are very important for kind of your go-to-market. So just trying to be better marketer, you know what I mean? It's just, even to the point of like just reading your own blog, it's just, it's sometimes ridiculous where people are like, I'm spending so much money on content, but do you actually read your articles? Do you read your blog? Does that feel like you wrote it, or just the copywriter was like something like bullshit, right? So I think like, because I addressed those basic fundamental marketing things to a very high level with having tools that just allow me just to be better, but I'm not spending that much time on managing and running those tools, just help me to kind of be very effective and efficient. So
yeah, and fewer tools, deeper usage, and like nailing those fundamentals. And like, this is why I like talking to people like yourself, agency leaders and stuff, is that the reason like most SDR agencies, or at least the SDR agencies who have managed to make it to that 10-year point, it's because they've nailed the fundamentals and they continue to just stick to those fundamentals, and the tools will help them be a bit more efficient, optimize a few things, do lots of iteration, and you'll really focus on like the feedback loops off the back of all of that as well, right? Before you go around changing things or trying to like, I guess, wedge certain AI tools in or add more things on top, before you add more things, go back to the existing providers, ask what they're working on, ask how that's going to help your team, because what we see consistently is people adding more tools, and that distracts their teams, particularly SDRs, and then the fundamentals get more and more hazy, and that's what's actually affecting people's pipelines, right? So you've spoken a lot there about kind of like from the marketing perspective. How would you, in this day and age, tell the marketing team to work alongside the SDRs, or if they're doing all of that good content creation, capturing all of that, how should they work with those SDRs? Do SDRs need more tools, or should they, and I kind of leading question here, and I can predict what you're going to say, do SDRs need simple, clean stacks as well, or are there a load of things they should also be looking at the tools?
So the thing about the SDRs is, I think like every organization have a different life cycle they're in right now, and based on the life cycle, their SDRs might look different in a way. So what I mean by that is, if I have a mature sales organization right now, my SDRs don't necessarily do a lot of data enrichment or signal gathering or hypothesis validation, right? They don't necessarily need to go and just say whether this ICP or that ICP works better for me, right? What they can do now is they sort of like can work with marketing to just understand the touch points they're building with prospects and make sure that those touch points are regular, that those touch points have a buying intent, and then at the end of the day that that they can build as many of those kind of intention touch points over the time of the customers and at the bigger scale, right? So that's why a lot of that can be automated and a lot of that can be fed to kind of an SDR, right? The problem is that when a lot of companies that haven't had a mature SDR team start thinking about the SDR, they wanted to skip and get to the point where I am at, and I've spent like 10 years doing that. So they miss a lot of things that a successful SDR organization need to have. A good example is probably about like 75% of our customers come to us and then they say, hey, here are the ideal clients I want to work with. This is what we're selling. But then the titles that we start working with for those customers are different in 6 months or 8 months from where we started.
Yep.
Because very often when they come in with this kind of clients in mind, they usually just get them either based off their hunch feeling, based on their existing customers, based on how their sales team is selling, but it's not, maybe what the market says, right? So you need to validate that. The offering that they're selling, the differentiations might be different. Even the way you engage with prospects, right? Like you don't know which channel you engage, what they care about, right? And then your entire marketing organization is not aligned. So here at the SDR, we are treated as a more like a kind of a, again, in a way like a scientist, because what you do, you literally come in and then you say, all right, well, let's first validate. Let's first make sure that, the 100 or 200 prospects we reached out to, whatever we are selling to them, that actually makes sense to them, that like how we're talking about the product actually makes sense, whether they respond to it. So we don't even need to talk about the deals, pipeline, anything. We literally just want to have the data and information. But once you do that and you validate that, and and then you start scaling that, that's where maybe kind of automation comes in, where you have a LinkedIn solution or LinkedIn tool that helps you to optimize your outreach and create more building campaigns, where you're not just reaching out to people, but you're also engaging with them in more intentional fashion. But then that LinkedIn should be integrated back to your central tool, like the Hubspot or something, right? Then you do kind of calling. Maybe you like Power Dialer, and then your CRM doesn't have a Power Dialer. That's fine, but that tool should also be integrated back into your CRM so that you can measure those touch points. You do the outreach. Maybe you like doing outreach through HubSpot sequences. Great. But then maybe you have an outreach IO that you like because your SDR are doing CRM. Does it integrate back into your CRM, and how this all talks, right? And then how your marketing utilizing it. So these are the questions that, I'm always trying to answer for my customers and for us, because I know that whatever data we're generating, whatever intentions we're doing and actions we're getting, it should lead back to this one system that tracks all my customer engagements. Because what I'm doing is that I'm thinking about how do I build that over time. So all the marketing dollars I'm spending right now, I know that I'm going to get my ROI tomorrow, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years ago, but I shouldn't lose it, right? And again, I think that's the key, because when people are pursuing lots of different tools in lots of different directions, and they are not talking to each other, and you're trying to fix this use case, like, oh, I'm just going to get the signals here, and my SDRs will be spending so much time getting those signals. If it doesn't lead to a home solution that is with customers, then it's just waste of time.
Love everything you said there. Could do all the pitching for me. It'd be great. But like everything integrating back to a single place of work is like so important, because consistency over time is what builds relationships and builds pipeline with your audience or your customers. And quite just like you said, you've got signals over here. Maybe you use an outreach tool. Maybe you have a power dialer over here. You want all of that to integrate back to your CRM so that your SDRs can spend 80 or 90% of their time just working that, like their list. They grow familiar, they become more and more familiar with it. Marketing can see what's happening, adjust their campaigns appropriately, and that's what starts to create like the consistent flywheel of consistent pipeline. And to your point before, people need to give it a lot of time and a lot of effort to get to that like consistent high performing SDR team. Not every team's going to be able to jump in at that in I guess that late stage where they've got an outreach tool, a power dialer, marketing's singing consistently. But that seems to be what, if you look at LinkedIn, everyone is telling you to do by buying 15 different tools.
Yeah.
To be really clever, and you'll never have to make a cold call again in your life. Everyone will be warm. Everybody, no, you need to get really good at having conversations with your customers first. Design your CRM, get maximum usage out of your CRM to support consistent prospecting that marketing can also feed off of, and then layer in other tools to give yourselves back capacity. And it's why you guys are one of the best omni-channel agencies out there, because you put in those hard yards.
Yeah, and to your point, James, it just takes so much time, right? You cannot do even that within a year. So
Yeah.
whatever tools you're buying right now, you need to have a vision to stick to them for at least 3-5 years to literally get it there, right? And people don't like to be patient these days, just because, as you said yourself, like they read out on LinkedIn, like, this is what you do, this is how you be successful, this is the workflow you build, and they think like, oh, this is it, this is the solution to my problem in a business, and it's not. So I think like being patient and try to have like a vision. It's something that you are taught once once you pass like 5-7 year threshold in the business, you start thinking a different, like instead of thinking about the monthly or quarterly, you're just thinking about like how my 3-5 next year is going to look like, right? And am I set up for success, right? And if that's the way you're thinking about this, then it's just becomes so easier. And like, is this the tool that I will be using in the next 5 years? Is this the person that will be doing this in the next 5 years? Is that the process I'll be sticking into the 5 years, or this is just a temporary? And if that is, and you know that you can scale that, then probably that's the best way to kind of for you to double down on.
Yeah, absolutely right. And so I think it's a good time now to maybe jump into sort of our build with Stakki segment. So you've spoken a lot about using different tools, having them sync back to one place of work for the SDRs. So hopefully this would be a great exercise and give people like some real insight into how big agencies with big mature SDR teams are doing it now. So if we jump to here, from what you've said already, I assume probably using HubSpot. Is that a safe
Yes.
bet? Yeah. Really good CRM. And like to your point, there's a lot of capabilities that they're consistently adding into HubSpot.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful tool now.
Yeah. I like the fact that you could start it as a free CRM and then you can easily upgrade. Either you go in the sales direction when you need to have a more sales motion, or you go in the marketing direction with a marketing motion, or you go into CSM direction. And then, it's just kind of, really cool. So,
yeah, it's a great CRM, right? And even now it's adding more sort of AI capabilities, integration with things like OpenAI, ChatGPT and stuff. And so I wouldn't advise most people dive straight into that, trying to sync up ChatGPT and OpenAI, because it would probably cause a lot of distraction and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think they're probably at the forefront for the big CRMs on that flexibility and giving people those options on how to build their own agents into and their own systems into it, I think.
Yeah. You know that it's not many people know this, but HubSpot has a pretty kind of open kind of integration, API integration marketplace type of functionality. So my partner Vlad, he just kind of built an app kind of helping to automate email follow-ups for my sales team, and he built it based on our kind of best practices. And he built it with like kind of vibe coding and stuff, and then he just added it to a HubSpot marketplace and then connected it to the interface so that the sales team can access it through just main dashboard, so you don't need to do any development work basically there. And I liked it a lot, so that they allow like a third-party apps to be integrated into your stack to use this. And I feel like kind of the future would be kind of more and more apps working together. So if you're missing something on HubSpot, let's say, hey, I want an AI agent that will help me with this or that, and if you can probably very soon will be able to just add it. So the features will be replaced by third-party features, which I love.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes back to one of the points I think you made fairly consistently through for what we're talking about. Is like, know what you're trying to use it for. Don't go and find a tool. This is really smart. Well, we can do that. We'll put that into our stack. Like, well, your team's never done anything like that, or used that type of feature, or used that type of process. Whereas actually, you should be mapping out, what am I trying to achieve? How do our team want to work? Can this be automated a little bit? And go and find something that helps you do that rather than the other way around, right? So got HubSpot in. What other tools are we adding in here?
So for the research, is that like a lead research company?
Lead accounts research.
List building. Yeah. So I would definitely do LinkedIn Sales Navigator. I'll do
still
Apollo.
Kind of a staple for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah. I'll do Apollo for sure. Now we've done Phantom Buster in the past. I know it's nice. So
so Phantom Buster is a tool that will sort of identify potentially the right accounts across all of your social, not just LinkedIn, but all the other channels, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And you're still using that, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think for some cases we're using it. Yeah, especially for the sources that are a bit unique in a way, right? So, yeah.
And then,
data. Yeah.
Data. There's so many options here. I imagine as an agency, you've probably got quite a few in place.
Actually, we've decided we didn't. So the thing about the contact, the data, right? That I'm very bullish about as well is that most of the guys here in the list, they don't have a proprietary data set. Like most of their data is get off the LinkedIn, right? So it's not like what you think about this, what the way these guys can collect the data in a very powerful way, right? So probably the ones that have a bit unique data set are ZoomInfo,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, this is kind of this. Then Cognism also
Hmm.
have good European data set. And then,
Yeah.
for example, Lucia has a good kind of mobile phone numbers, but then they're a bit expensive in a way. So we kind of use them case by case. But what we've seen
Okay.
is that, for example, Apollo has one of the best match rates, for example, for mobile data,
Yeah.
for the cost that you pay them, right? So,
Yeah.
their cost is like whatever, like 3 cents or something, and
Yeah.
then you're getting a better deal than with Lucia, for example, it might be like 95 cents. So it's like 100 times more expensive.
Yeah.
So, for example, maybe if you're an SDR organization that an SDR needs to make those 100 calls, for example, or you have 100 potential customers, right? Maybe, Lucia could be a better way than with Apollo, whatever. But we are
Mm.
trying to kind of use a lot of them, a few of them.
Yeah.
Um, Over time, we've kind of developed our own platform for data sourcing and data validation and data enrichment. Um, and the reason we've done that is we didn't see any, most of the solutions in the list here, they provide lists based on predefined criteria or data filters that you have. Basically,
Hmm.
like, this is my industry, this is my size, and then here's the list, right? If you and another 1,000 companies or thousands of your competitors have the same access to the same data set, probably the results of your outreach will be lower,
Yeah.
just because at the same time the same number of companies or bigger number of companies are doing the outreach with the same value, similar value proposition. So we are always trying to see, like, what's the way we can create a more unique data set, a more unique list. So that's
Yeah.
why we mainly worked around how we can optimize our sales navigator on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
and how we can optimize the way the sales navigator is showing up the data, and then how we can use AI um, to sort of like validate and qualify whether the company in the list match the value proposition of Belkins, or let's say of our customers, if we're doing
Hmm.
this research for our customers. And over time, obviously, we've had to get in touch and work with the providers
Hmm.
that these guys on the list here work with as well. So we've
Yeah.
kind of passed through the kind of the
Yeah.
middleman and went straight to where they're getting the data and tried to work with them, because on the scale of our agency, it just made more sense in a way. But
100%.
for an
Yeah.
actual for just a user, or just a customer or a person listening to this, probably that won't make much sense. So if I were you, I would really just stick to the basics. Probably just gonna go, with Apollo,
Yeah.
and then when I have an Apollo, for example, yeah, I'm not gonna go with all like in like a Cognitive Zoom info. I'm probably gonna
Yeah.
do Apollo,
Yeah.
and then I'll look at the data that Apollo has, and I see, like, okay, the next tool in the list should provide the missing data. So as a secondary
Exactly
tool,
that. Yeah.
right? So if my Apollo match rate is like 80%, then for the missing 20%, I need to find an alternative tool. And if you're in the US, for example, maybe that would be a Zoom Info. Or
Yeah.
if you are in Europe, maybe it can be Cognism, right? But that's it. I'm not
Yeah.
going to go and say just, oh, I'm going to have 3 of those solutions, because then my data will be 3 times better. That's not going to
It
happen.
doesn't work like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Exactly. It's people think more data in enrichment providers means I have more data. It's like, well, actually, they're probably covering so much of the
yeah,
same contacts that you're not actually getting that much more. Um, and you're right. So I normally would suggest something similar, right? If they've got an Apollo, you need to look at where their gaps are, and then
yeah.
look for a second tool to cover those specifically. Often for a lot of companies, that might be maybe one of the waterfall providers now as well, like a Full Enrich,
Okay.
Better Contact, maybe Surf,
Mm,
because they will be they will go through sort of their 15 or 20 databases in the order based on the other contacts you're trying to find. So maybe I think that's often an easier way for companies to plug those gaps, right? But Zoom Info Cognizant is still pretty good, big proprietary databases for the right region.
I love, though, like, the reason I've mentioned Zoom Info and Cognism is that I love the guy. I like those guys that have billions of dollars in their bank account, because like usually they're more accountable to come up with some, like more fresher things, because most of
Hmm.
the guys that just pop up on the blog,
Yeah.
they're easy to fall. So it means that they're using a tactics that they might be just purchasing the list of a third party provider they're not verified, because like for them it's just,
Hmm.
they don't, like, at the end of the day, if something happens with them, then this is it. But with companies like ZoomInfo and Goodnews, they need to be very careful about how they're getting the data, how they're reaching the data. So they're
Hmm.
going a long length to just get it. So
Yeah.
maybe the ZoomInfo might be for example, partnering with a with the IP providers in the US, for example, and then getting
Yeah.
some kind of IP data, right? Like probably a company that's been around for a few years won't be able to go that far, right?
Yeah.
So that's why probably the uniqueness of so the point here is that if you're thinking about the unique data, the signals, something that you can enrich your leads with, probably some of these bigger guys, companies have
Yeah.
some of that unique data. It's more likely than the smaller guys, because with smaller
Hmm.
guys they just don't have the resources to do
Yeah.
that, right? And the capabilities. Yeah.
Yeah. And this goes back to one of your points before. You're always thinking, because of the maturity of your business, you're thinking, are these the providers that I will be using in 3 years, in
Mm,
5 years? Because you don't want to keep chopping and changing. It's a
yes.
lot of waste of time and effort, right? And the Zoom infos and Cognizants, they've been around. They've proven that they do have all the good data. What I would say to a lot of companies, though, and I think this is kind of what you're alluding to here, is that they don't necessarily need to be your primary
Hmm.
database. And that's where people spend a lot of money. They go, oh, I have to get Cognizant, I have to get Zoom Info because it's the best in the market. It's like, well, actually, you're racking up a load of cost there. So
Yeah.
actually go to one of the cheaper ones, and Apollo, Upsell, I'm a huge fan of, great databases. Get those as your primaries. And then you don't need to necessarily then buy every single person a Zoom Info license
Yeah.
or a Cognizant license. You might just have your RevOps person, a
Hmm.
go-to-market engineer, or someone on the operations team with one license and enough credits to plug the gaps in the CRM. Again, going back to your point, if you can build everything putting into the CRM, so your SDRs spend their most time there, that works perfectly.
Yeah.
And that's how you can keep the cost down, but give yourself the best data coverage.
Yeah.
So we'll keep those there then, as sort of those best in. And then from your sort of intent tools and sort of the outreach, what other tools might we have in your system? I'm imagining, given on some of the stuff you said, HubSpot, you're making good use of their sort of buyer intent suite.
Yeah, we have that. We've tested other ones. I think we are still using Warmly. It's been decent, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're more on the expensive side as far as I know.
Hmm.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to. We tested a few guys here in the list that we're not very good at. So I just don't want to call names to create additional PR here. But yeah. But Warmly was kind of a good one.
Yeah.
For engagement, we are using Reply.io. We've been with them for like 10 years, and
Nice.
this is actually something that like agencies are one of the most stickiest clients in the business, because once
Yeah.
we integrate this tool, there's no way we're going to go get away if we're treated nicely, but also if we're getting a good deal. I
100%.
I know Oleg, the founder of Reply, for 10 years, and they gave us a good deal early on, and we
Hmm.
stick to that deal for the entire time. So if someone came in and say, hey, we wanted to replace this, I'd like just, I'm
It'd be
too
hard.
deeply integrated into the
Yeah.
relationship, and it doesn't make sense. So yeah, we're using Reply.io, and it's on par, similar to all other tools. Like again, we've done so much outreach in the space. We have our own homegrown tools. We've tested
Hmm.
everything. At the end of the day, it's just the matter of the taste, right? So
Yeah.
Reply.io for multi-channel, for the for email, a dialer, we're using Nooks
Yeah.
right now. Yeah, they have a calling local ID, which we love,
Yeah.
and we also have a lot of nice phone numbers. So it's just and then Nooks actually, people don't know, like Nooks also have a mobile data credit coverage, so they
Yeah.
also give credits for the data, so you use them for also to enrich your mobile data phone numbers, and they have some
Hmm.
features about whether this phone number is actually used in the business purposes or not, so it helps the calling as well. So our
Absolutely.
dialers are using it as well. Yeah. So
with
Nooks.
um with such a mature team, big team. I imagine with Nooks, one of the features your managers use a lot is also the coaching elements in there.
Yes.
So the conversational
Yeah.
AI, the virtual sales
A
floors,
lot.
all
Yeah.
that ability,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And we do reporting on Hubspot for customers. So every customer that
Mm-hmm.
comes through Belkins, we've either integrate with their Hubspot um, or we create our own instance of a HubSpot for them, and then Nooks have this very nice feature of multi instances as well, so that my one SDR can have a direct integration with the HubSpot, and then they
Mm-hmm.
can switch between the instances and then go to the other instance, customer instance. So it's kind of easier for us as
Nice.
well for
Yeah,
the
great.
data synchronization process as well. So yeah. For LinkedIn automation, we're using expanded.io. If you have them on the list or not,
Haven't added them just yet, no, but
yeah.
good tool, very similar.
Yeah, yeah. They're nice. I think that, like with the LinkedIn, the most important part for LinkedIn is just the matter of security, right? Like whether
Mm-hmm.
your page is restricted or not. Like so, like the if they're using your local IP,
Yeah,
proxy, and then some other things, and just generally it's nice. So yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
I know that's similar principle to Get Sales. They've got those sort of protections. But yeah, I think that's where a lot of people are maybe hesitant with LinkedIn automation tools and stuff. So I would stress to anybody listening, if you are going to look at LinkedIn automation, look for the tools that are going to protect your profile
mhm, mhm.
over any other like smart, clever features they
And
might
also
tell you.
I would also use on LinkedIn, the most important is the history of the business. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
if the company has been around for like 10 years and with lots of customers, they already figured out a lot of things. So
Yeah,
don't be foolish to get the new tool. Like for LinkedIn specifically, it's been around like this new tool that's been around for like a year or something is
yeah,
fresh. They're promising something. Probably LinkedIn can cut up on them, and then just kind of you get you
absolutely.
guys blacklisted or something. You don't want that. So
And we're
I
seeing that
with
more and more at
LinkedIn
the moment.
specifically, yeah, with LinkedIn, I specifically say like, hey, maybe I'm not going to be using the best features that are out there, but
Mm-hmm.
at least the solution I'm using will 100% secure me from getting banned or blacklisted, which is more important. So
Yeah, excellent. And look, I imagine that's probably most of the tools. You've got everything covered there. Obviously, I'd also add Expandy on the bottom here when we add it into the system. But you've got you've got good data. You're not maxing out on a huge amount of credits. Doing most of the work with
yeah.
Apollo. LinkedIn Sales Navigator, as most people know, is still one of the best for data, for contacts, building lists, checking your ICPs. And this is a nice clean stack which gives your team a lot of options. But I imagine they're spending most of their time either calling with reply running in the background.
Yeah, reply for email, Nooks for calling, and then expand it for LinkedIn. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to kind of maximize, um, if email is one of my main core channels to acquiring leads, and I'm doing that at a very high scale, I need to be very good at the email. So I need to just be so for me, just using one tool for all the channels doesn't make sense because like for example, reply.io, they also have a calling feature or instantly, right? But their calling feature is less advanced than the Nooks one, right? So I need to have Nooks because they're the best in the game for that specific purpose. The same goes with like most of the like outreach, sales loft, like everyone have a LinkedIn part of it,
Yeah,
but it's not as good as a specialized LinkedIn software. So I need to have that. So these are the only things that I'm like, I'm usually like love to use the all-in-one tools, but when it comes to outreach, I based on the channel, I have a specialized channel tool that work together with the other ones. So they are like very tied together. So
that's the key that people miss. I think most people go wrong, or most people will hear everything you said up until maybe that last sentence. I go, yeah, no, I need the best in brand for each thing because it's going to be the best. But then they miss the part where you say, and they all need to work together coherently and pull back to the CRM, like the points you made earlier, because that is what creates something cohesive for your team, which allows them to then focus and do consistent and good outreach. And that's what builds pipeline long term. which is why you've had such a successful agency.
Quick use case, an example of how this could work in practice, right? So LinkedIn tools, they don't have a direct integration almost with any outreach tool anyway. So so we plug them back to HubSpot through a webhook integration. So whenever I build the list first, let's say in Apollo, I then upload that list automatically to HubSpot. I have it that list in HubSpot, it lives there. Then from HubSpot through webhook integration, it goes straight to Expandy and we run a campaign there. If that person in the list, if we connect with them or someone respond message, I see this information back into HubSpot.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And then on the HubSpot, I have a dynamic list that push leads into Nooks. So then my SDR can go and start their day and say, oh, I want to call the people that I reached out to on LinkedIn, that I'm connected with, that I sent message to, but didn't respond. So I can use this as the second channel to follow up. Then they're doing the calling, all the calling activities going back to HubSpot. And then they called, they don't respond. And then they go to HubSpot and say, okay, here's the list of people that were on LinkedIn that we called that didn't respond. Let us put them in a reply.io email sequence. So they go the sequence. So in this way, like, all the tools, even though they don't have a direct integration with each other, they're all talking back to HubSpot, and then HubSpot then talk back to them. And then Azure use HubSpot as their main kind of workspace to just make sense of all the data. But because HubSpot also can integrate with your website, with your chat, with your email, with the other, it's just really worked really well for me because I can run ads there. I can see how people are looking at ads. I can look at how they're reading my content, how they're doing the emails, and it just store the data. And then I can attribute this back to my sales and my pipeline and so on and so forth. So that's kind of, that's kind of my approach. And I like it a lot when we get to the point where like I start doing it. Like, I probably like even 4 years ago, I couldn't dream of having the setup like this because the tools didn't talk to each other that well. And the HubSpot wasn't that kind of, but now I think like every tool out there, they're trying to open up because of the AI and because like it's just now a common knowledge for the tools to talk to each other. So it's better to integrate a few tools in your stack than having many more tools that are just do the same work, right? So
yeah, and that's like such a good use case, and it's what we are trying to, I guess, educate our market on. But it's great having you on the show. Like, we want people to understand that you should look for tools that fit how you want to work, fit your workflows, fit the process, and support your SDRs. So to achieve that, you need everything to be cohesive, putting back to your CRM, so that all of leadership they can see accurate insight into what's happening. They don't have to go and find 3 or 4 different tools and disparate systems and stuff like that. So then they don't really know where to fix or where to put their time and energy in, which when they're building pipeline. And that's that starts to break down their forecasting ability and stuff like that. If you can get the system that you've kind of just described there, where everything runs off of a clean, accurate list in the CRM with the other tools as a means for the SDRs to speak to more people, that is what's going to allow people to forecast more accurately, build more predictable revenue, more predictable performance. And that's what everyone wants, right? And that's where you guys have done so well in getting to such a mature and high-performing omnichannel agency.
Yeah, that's right.
Michael, great having you on the show. Absolute pleasure. You shared a lot of insight there, so we do appreciate it. Where can people go to, I guess, learn, find out a bit more about yourself, and continue to be educated by all the knowledge you've got?
Yeah, so just look me up on LinkedIn by Michael Maximoff, or I do a newsletter called From Zero to Agency Hero, where I share my journey. So it's a monthly newsletter. I'm trying to put lots of time in creating a long form articles there. So feel free to tune there as well. So, and thanks James for having me. I had so much fun. Lots of really great questions that I've rarely think about, but I was happy that we were able to discuss them.
Absolute pleasure having you on, Michael. Everybody, if you can please like and subscribe to Stakki on YouTube, and go visit our website and reach out if you need any help with anything around sales tech. Thanks very much, Michael.
Thanks, James.